Chapter 12. Barry was very excited on the way to the shooting range. He imagined it would be something like the ones he'd seen in various James Bond films, when James Bond practiced his skills. A long indoor hall with, at the far end, a row of one-dimensional dummies with targets for faces, and at the other end would be somewhere you could shoot from, with a selection of handguns and some earmuffs for the noise. He was so excited, in fact, that he said, "Are we nearly there yet?" twice on the way. He had time to say this, as it took a lot longer to get there than Barry had expected. Instead of the shooting range being, for example, in a secret chamber under the house, he and Lord Raider Welloff and all the other children had got into another stretch limo, this time a stretch Range Rover, and Peevish started driving them out into the countryside. It wasn't all that comfortable a journey. His bucket of chips rattled against his leg all the way. Sea Anemone was still crying, and all the others were looking at Barry as if they'd really prefer it if he wasn't there. But Barry didn't care. He couldn't wait to start aiming at those dummies. Bang! Take that, Goldfinger. Bang! In your face, strange Spanish man with the blonde wig from Skyfall. He even started thinking about some of the clever one-liners he might say after shooting at them. Suck on that, dummy! Ha, he thought, after he came up with that. By the time they arrived, it was starting to get dark. Peevish got out of the car and went over to a small shed. He walked in and flicked a switch. Lights flooded the area they were standing in, which turned out not to be a long hall with dummies, with targets' faces at one end, but a long muddy field. Peevish came out of the shed holding a bundle of greeny-brown anoraks and flat caps. "Put those on, children," said Lord Raider Welloff, who, Barry noticed, was already wearing similar gear. The children all did as they were told. Then Peevish returned, pushing a wheelbarrow stacked up with what appeared to be a number of enormously long black trumpets. He started handing them out to the children one by one. "What are these?" said Barry, when it was his turn. "Guns, of course," said Lord Raider Welloff. "This model's our own personal family shotgun, the Raider Welloff flintlock mechanism blunderbuss, Bessie for short. Goes off with quite a bang though, so watch out." Peevish handed Barry one of the Bessies. Barry immediately fell over. It was literally the heaviest thing he'd ever held. "Ha-ha!" he heard one of the other children, it might have been Jeremy or Teremy or even Meremy, say as he struggled to get up. "Stupid Barrington's too weak to hold his own gun." "I'm not. Peevish, can you help me?" "Certainly, your weakliness." Slipped. Barry managed, with help from Peevish, to stand back up. He put the gun to one side of him, leant on it, and tried to look relaxed and jaunty. "Might I just... your idiocy," said Peevish. Barry frowned. Peevish adjusted Barry's flat cap, which had ended up backwards on his head, so that it faced forwards again. "Thank you, Peevish," said Barry, wondering whether he should give him a chip from his bucket as a tip. But before he could do so, Lord Raider Welloff bellowed, "Right, line up, everyone!" The children, all of whom, apart from Barry, seemed to understand how to carry the Bessies so as to not fall over, lined up. Barry tried to make it look all right and perfectly normal that he was using his gun, basically as a walking stick. "Right, Peevish," said Lord Raider Welloff. "What's the target today?" Peevish went back into the shed and came out again, holding not a dummy, not a cut-out figure of a man with a scar and a monocle who may have been in charge of a criminal organisation trying to take over the world, but a big silver platter with a big silver dome on it. He walked to the front of the line and children and said, "Voila," which Barry thought was French for, "Here you are," and took the big silver dome off the big silver platter. Underneath was a large grey and white bird with beautiful yellow eyes and a black pointy beak. It looked terrified, shaking with fear. It flapped its wings trying to fly away, but Barry could see that the legs were held to the silver platter by a series of chains. "Perfect, the grouse are so big and flappy and shootable this time of year, eh, Peevish?" "Whatever you say, sir." "All right, you know the drill." Peevish put the silver dome back on top of the bird and walked about 100 metres away from the line of children. "Hoist!" shouted Lord Raider Welloff. All the children heaved their Bessies up onto the top of their chests, pointing forwards. With a supreme effort, Barry did so too, though he thought his arms were going to break. "Aim!" shouted Lord Raider Welloff. All the children moved their guns towards Peevish. Barry, every muscle straining, did so too. "Now, remember, first shot goes to the new boy." "What?" said Barry, who had been very much hoping to pretend to shoot when the time came. "Special treat. Special privilege." "Dad," said Jeremy, Teremy, Meremy, all of them. "Stop complaining. It was the same for you when you arrived. If he misses, one of you can bag the bird. So, are you ready, young Barrington?" Splendid. Let her go, Peevish. With an extra flourish, the butler took off the dome again and expertly released the chains. The grouse flapped uncertainly, rising to just above Peevish's head. It looked like it had been held captive so long it didn't understand where it should go. Come on, Barrington, said Lord Raider Welloff. Go on, you stupid idiot. Shoot, you bird. What are you going to do? Kill it. All this from the other children. Barry didn't know what to do. He really, really, really didn't want to shoot a defenceless bird. So he said, I don't want to. Chapter 13. What's going on, Lord R.W., said a shrill voice. It was Lady Raider Welloff, who had appeared through the bushes with a number of guests from the casino. Can't make it out, Lady Raider Welloff. Barrington doesn't seem to want to take his shot. Doesn't want to? But I thought you said you liked guns. I did, but Barry didn't know what to say. His arms were killing him and all these people were watching and he could feel the other children smirking at him. Not really a son of mine so far, it seems, said Lord Raider Welloff. OK, Jeremy, Teremy, Meremy, Heremy, Queremy, Smelleremy, See an Enemy and Dave, fill your boots. Barry wasn't sure what that meant. Most of them did have Wellingtons on, but they were full of their feet already. But it soon became clear what it meant, basically was shoot the bird, because they all started aiming very, very intently towards it. With every ounce of strength he had left, Barry then did something which, to be honest, he hadn't been expecting to do. He stepped in front of the bird and shouted, Put your guns down! Everyone froze and looked confused. Barry could hear the flapping of the grouse above his head. Pardon, Barrington, said Lady Raider Welloff. I said, put your guns down. Let the bird go. In Barry's mind, this sentence was meant to be accompanied by a smooth, James Bond-like move of the Bessies up to his shoulder and then an even smoother sweep of it around in a semicircle to protect the bird. Unfortunately, it was actually accompanied by him swinging up the barrel into his face, hitting himself on the chin and falling over backwards. In fact, it would be truer to say that it went, I said, put your guns down, let the... The children all looked at each other. Slowly, Barry picked himself up from the ground, using Bessie less as a gun and more as a crutch. Then, Jeremy swung his gun towards Barry and said, Why should we do that? At which point, all the other children swung their guns towards Barry as well. Children, no, said Lady Raider Welloff. Now, said Lord Raider Welloff. Oops, said Peevish. But the guns of the other children remained trained on him. Barry felt sweat breaking out on his forehead. He felt terrified and very, very tired, all at the same time, a combination he hadn't before known was possible. He looked over to the crowd of people watching and suddenly seemed to see the two servants, the man and woman, the ones whose familiar faces had been standing by when he had arrived. They were looking at him with concern on their faces, their familiar faces, with concern, with hope, and with something else that Barry couldn't quite name. He heard a click. It was Jeremy, or rather Jeremy's gun. Barry knew that time was running out. He felt something against his leg. He looked down. It was his bucket of chips, £36 million worth. His legs, at least, had a tiny bit of strength left in them, so he kicked out and up, like Lionel Messi might have done when aiming for a free kick that needed to go up and well over the wall, and the bucket rose above them all, turning over and over, almost in slow motion, and spilling £36 million of chips into the air. Immediately, Jeremy, Teremy, Meremy, Heremy, Queremy, Smelleremy, See an Enemy and Dave dropped their guns and started rushing all over the field, arms outstretched trying to catch the falling chips, as did all the guests and all the servants, apart from the oddly familiar two, who seemed to have vanished, and indeed Peevish. The grouse, which suddenly seemed to understand what was best, opened its wings and flew away high over the trees. Barry looked round. Standing there, looking crestfallen, were Lord and Lady Raider Welloff. Said Lord Raider Welloff. That didn't quite go to plan, did it? Still, anything else we can do for you, Barrington? Yes, said Barry. I'd like to go back to the parent agency, please. And that is the end of the chapter. It's also the end of Barry's day with his first set of pretend parents. So we are going to leave it there for now, and I will continue this story later.